All right, everybody, how's it going? Game by game picks for the Steelers to get us into the weekend. If you missed it yesterday, I posted it in the community tab. StreamYard was having some issues yesterday. I guess a lot of people were trying to use StreamYard at once, and so I tried to do this for about a half hour yesterday. And once it was pretty evident that it just wasn't going to work, I posted in there saying, "Hey, we're just going to do this tomorrow," which is now today. And so here we are. So if you didn't see it, don't worry. I wasn't negating doing this. I wasn't ignoring doing this. StreamYard was just having some issues, so that prevented me from being able to do this edition of the show. So um, we'll wait a few minutes for folks to get in here rather than start right away. But I'm excited to see what the season holds. I think most of us are. A lot of people were upset about how the schedule was laid out in terms of, hey, the Steelers don't have a divisional game until week 11. I'm not too worried about that. Steelers usually play pretty well within the division. And I think that, the added weather elements will play into their hands rather than against them. The Bears also don't have a divisional game of any kind until week 11. So, it's not as if the Steelers were the only team that, were dealt that specific hand in general. So, not too worried about it. I think they'll be okay. And I think the front part of their schedule is relatively, team friendly. There's a lot of winnable games in the first 9 weeks of the season. So if they can get off to a hot start, they can afford to have a few games on the back end where, if they start off, 6-3, 7-3, something of that nature, then yeah, you can afford to have a game where you lose to Cincinnati, where, if you drop one to Cleveland, AFC North football. I highly, highly doubt the Steelers are going to go 6-0 in the division. So, there's some added in losses that come with the schedule. And again, the fact that they play all of them after like week 11 and beyond. So like November through December is mostly divisional games. The games that mean the most taking place in the part of the season where games mean the most. So somewhat poetic in that sense. We'll get started. And if people join later and everything, I'll do periodic recaps and whatnot, and I'll go over everything as a whole at the end. But to start off, the Steelers will travel to Atlanta to play the Falcons. I have that as a win. I think the Falcons are going to be a good team, but again, I've said this before. I think the Steelers catching them in week 1 is good for them because Atlanta won't have any sort of time to get any chemistry down, at least not in the regular season. We'll see how much they play in the preseason, but much better to play them in week 1 than, say, week 12. So I think the Steelers will win. And in terms of a score prediction, I went 24-17 Steelers. Week 2, second consecutive revenge game, if you will. The Steelers taking on the Broncos. I have them winning in week 2 as well. I think the Broncos are going to be a bottom 5 team in the NFL. I don't think that there's going to be much to be excited about. Their quarterback's either going to be Bo Nix or Zach Wilson. There's not a lot there. Not a lot of star power in Denver right now. So the Steelers win that game. I have them winning by a score of 21-10 in Denver in Russell Wilson's first game back to Mile High. They then open at Acrisure week 3 against the Chargers. It's Justin Herbert's first trip to Pittsburgh. And I think that this is where the Steelers will sustain their first loss. I don't know necessarily what to make of the Chargers. I think they're going to be a team that isn't horrible, but at the same time, I don't know how much I buy into them being a playoff team. However, Justin Herbert is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And the Steelers, I don't feel like they're going to start off 3-0. I'm very hesitant to have many teams that all start 3-0, much less a team that doesn't have an elite quarterback. Is it a game that they can win? Absolutely. Most of these are games they can win. But we saw last year, games that we expect them to win, sometimes they slip away. But the Chargers have a really good quarterback. And I think that that's what this could come down to. So the Chargers I have beating Pittsburgh 26-20, and the Steelers fall to 2-1. And then Pittsburgh travels to Indianapolis for their third road game in the first 4 weeks of the season. I have the Steelers dropping that one as well. I think the Colts are going to be really good this season. I have them as a playoff team, which will go over my overall first set of game by game predictions for the league as a whole. Did that today on the pump fake, so you can go watch that. But we'll talk more about the AFC North side of that on Monday. But as a whole, I think the Colts are going to be good. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be a stud. And I think the Colts win 27-17 over Pittsburgh. Okay. Week 5 against Dallas. Second home game of the season. This one will be in prime time. Steelers already somewhat of a kind of must win if they, want to avoid a 3-game skid. And I think they get it done. I think that Dallas is going to be a team that is just surrounded by stuff that's not going on the field, where it's a lot of contract talks. Are they going to pay CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons? Is Dak going to leave after this season? I think that that's going to be kind of their MO, the overarching tale of the Cowboys this season is just worrying about guys not getting paid, and really this potentially being Dak Prescott's final year there, but also the final year of Mike McCarthy in Dallas. So I think that the Steelers beat the Cowboys at 24-17 to get to 3-2 on the season. All right, week 6, they travel to Vegas. Again, another road game. They won in Vegas last year, and I think that the result will be very similar this season. Las Vegas is going to be starting either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. It's a team that doesn't have a ton of star power. Yeah, the Steelers got to make a trip out west, but this is a team, again, doesn't have a lot of star power on it, has a bad quarterback. The Steelers have the better defense. The Steelers winning 27-13 in Vegas to get to 4-2 on the year. Week 7, they play the Jets on Sunday night. I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair between two really good defenses, and usually in those situations, it comes down to what quarterback is going to make a play. I trust Aaron Rodgers to do that more so than either of the Steelers quarterbacks. So I have the Steelers losing to the Jets in Week 7, 16-13 on Sunday Night Football to take their record to 4-3. And then their third primetime game in 4 weeks, Pittsburgh will host the Giants on Monday Night Football. This is a game that they should win. I think the Giants are going to be the worst team in the NFL this season. I think they're going to have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. So the Steelers beat, again, a team with bad quarterback, not a lot of star power, not a lot of offensive talent whatsoever. We know that they got Brian Burns and they have Kayvon Thibodeau. So they have a few exciting guys, but Brian Burns himself isn't going to make the Giants a must-watch team. So Giants are going to be bad, and I think the Steelers have maybe their biggest win of the season in terms of how lopsided it will be. So my prediction is the Steelers don't give up a touchdown and win 30-9 over the Giants to head into the bye week in Week 9 at 5-3. And again, if you can head into the bye week at 5-3 and as Pittsburgh, that's a good spot to be in. Especially when you come off the bye week and you're playing a Washington Commanders team that will be playing a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. I don't know how much I believe in him as an NFL quarterback, but I like a lot of the additions they've made this season. They've got Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner in the middle of the defense. They brought in Jeremy Chin, got some nice players on offense. So I think that they will be a little bit more competitive than even I put in my game-by-game predictions. I came up with a number 4-13. I was like, that's probably going to change before September when I do the second iteration of this. So even myself, I think I'm questioning how much the lack of faith in Washington. But even then, I don't think that they will get the job done against the Steelers. I think Pittsburgh is just better on both sides of the ball. Better coach team, Dan Quinn. I think that Dan Quinn will be a fine head coach. He's obviously a very good defensive coach, but this just feels like a very foundation-laying year for the Commanders. And the Steelers win against Washington 20-10 to take the record to 6-3 as they enter division play against the Baltimore Ravens, who the Steelers have won 7 of their last 8 games against Baltimore. Lamar Jackson hasn't won in Pittsburgh since 2019. And we remember that game very fond, or maybe not fondly, but very well, where Mason Rudolph got knocked out of the game. Doug Hodges came in. So I have the Ravens winning, or I'm sorry, the Steelers winning over the Ravens by a score of 21-13 to get to 7-3 on the year. And then Pittsburgh heads to Cleveland, where they lost last year, and I think that they're going to lose the first matchup this season as well. It'll be close. I don't think that either of these are going to be blowouts, but I think that the Steelers and Browns right now is more of a even-sided rivalry than the Steelers and Ravens is. If you look at the last 6 matchups, I think it's an even 3-3 split between the Steelers and Browns. So I have the Steelers falling to Cleveland in week 12 by a score of 20-16 to take their record to 7-4. And then they play the Bengals. I'm really high on the Bengals this year. I think that they win the division. I think they'll make a deep playoff run come January. And I think the Steelers will lose their second straight in week 13. And I think it'll be a handed win for the Bengals. So I have Cincinnati winning 31-17 to take the Steelers to 7-5. And then right after that, the Steelers host Cleveland. I think that they get that win back after losing 2 weeks prior and defeat Cleveland 24-14 to get to 8-5 as they head across the state in week 15 to take on the Eagles. Now, Philadelphia will have a lot to prove this season. After the collapse last year, they're going to have, there's just a lot that they want to prove to everybody. They brought in Quinion Mitchell, they drafted Cooper DeJean, they signed Saquon Barkley. And they made a lot of coaching changes too, where Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator, Vic Fangio now the defensive coordinator. And while I think that they will win the NFC East, I still have my doubts. And when it comes to the Steelers late in the season, when they start figuring things out, they start winning games that people don't expect them to win. And I think that this will be one of those games. I think the Steelers will win in Philadelphia for the first time since 1965. They have lost their last 10 games in Philadelphia. I think that streak ends this season, and they win a low-scoring game, 20-16, to get to 9-5. Now, the game against Baltimore, week 16, they traveled to Baltimore. Last time the Steelers lost there was the 2019 season finale. And I think Robert Griffin III was the quarterback in that game. But I think that they beat Baltimore once again, 17-16 in another close, low-scoring game, which is their bread and butter, especially late in the season, and especially against Baltimore. So they win and get to 10-5. And now, unfortunately, you close off the season against Kansas City on Christmas and then against Cincinnati again. Steelers aren't winning on Christmas. I really just don't see them beating the Chiefs. Mahomes is 3-0 against them for his career. He's only thrown 1 interception. He has 14 touchdowns in those 3 games. He's owned Pittsburgh. So I will have the Chiefs winning by a score of 28-17 on Christmas over the Steelers, which drops Pittsburgh to 10-6. And then to close out the year, the Steelers put up a better effort against the Bengals than they did in the first game, but I think that the Bengals will sweep them. So I have the Bengals beating Pittsburgh 24-23 and finishing the year 10-7 and getting into the AAC playoffs as the number 7 seed, where they would face, in this situation, they would face the Bengals again. So it will be consecutive weeks of Steelers-Bengals and 3 overall matchups throughout the season. That's how I see it going. So Steelers going 10-7 in my game-by-game picks. Again, this is the first iteration of these, so I do another one the week of the season. So probably come out the Monday before week 1, so a few days before the Thursday night kickoff game. That's how I see it going. Let's see. as a Bay Areas, and I'm in full support of Brandon Ayuk to the Steelers. These Niner fans crying makes me happy. Yeah, again, I would like to see that happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that they're really going to run it back with Ayuk. They'll probably extend Ayuk, and that'll be that. But I don't see the 49ers moving off Ayuk or Deebo Samuel this season. I think that that'll be something that happens next offseason. I think that they'll extend Ayuk and they'll trade Deebo next year. But if you have any thoughts on the game by game picks, if you have any thoughts on your own thoughts what their record will be, drop them in the comments. Keep the conversation going for a little bit. Once more people hop in, I'll go through it again as a whole. But yeah, I do see a 10-7 record, which will put them again the number 7 seed in the AFC playoffs. That's what they were last year. And again, a little bit harder of a schedule than they had last year. I think if they had this year's team last season, I think that they win at least 11 games. I don't think that they lose to Arizona and New England, so you could probably kick that up to 12. So I think that if they had this team a season ago, they might have had a better playoff seed and maybe could have won a playoff game. Now, if this team, were to play Buffalo again, I'd still pick Buffalo. But, if they would have drawn, say, if they would have drawn the Texans, could they maybe beat them? Maybe. Or if they, if they would have faced the Browns, yeah, could they beat the Browns? Yes. Excuse me. I'm going to the Chiefs-Niners game this year. Can't wait to witness San Francisco get obliterated by 30. Yeah, the last time that the Chiefs and 49ers played was in Arrowhead, and I think the Chiefs put up like 44 or something like that. They won pretty convincingly. I think that would have been 2 years ago. Pretty sure it was 2 years ago. That was Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. That was before Jimmy got hurt and they put in Brock Purdy. So, yeah, it would have been 2 seasons ago now. But, and again, 10-7 is my tentative record right now. Again, I'll do another one of these ahead of the regular season, like the week of. Steelers might sign Michael Thomas, lost all faith. Yeah, look, Omar Khan and the Steelers as a whole, I think, just kind of played themselves into a corner a little bit. I think their plan was Mike Williams. I think that was their overall plan, was to sign Mike Williams and have a boundary, number 1, number 2 of George Pickens and Mike Williams, which, I mean, you can certainly do worse than that. Those are 2 good receivers. But then Mike Williams signed with the Jets, and Pittsburgh, I think, didn't think that would happen. So they were kind of left with, okay, well, now we've got to trade for somebody. And unfortunately, the trade market just kind of dried up. And it looks like if they can't get a deal for like a Cortland Sutton, maybe they'll have to trade for a Treylon Burks and just hope that his upside of being a former first-round pick comes through for them. So we'll see. Roman Wilson was just in case they can't get anyone great. No, I mean, Roman Wilson's still going to be used a ton. Like, he's still going to be their predominant slot guy. They'll put him on the outside sometimes. Like, Roman Wilson's going to have a big role in this offense. That wasn't just somebody that they took for shits and giggles. Like, he'll be used a good amount. And I'm excited to see what he does in the offense. I think he'll be really good. Especially, in where he was good at Michigan, really, was the intermediate crossers. Like, he's going to be the guy who is just constantly running in breakers in the middle of the field, and Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields will be looking his way. What's up, Jared? Hope all as well. Same to you and everybody watching. I appreciate that. Wouldn't be shocked if the Steelers lose to the Giants, Jets, and Commanders and beat the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs. That would be a pretty Steelers season. I think they'll lose to the Jets. I think they'll beat the Giants. I think that they'll beat the Commanders. That wouldn't be a game that I'd be too shocked if they lost. But I think they'll go 2-1 in that stretch. I think they'll beat the Eagles. I don't think they'll beat the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to win that somewhat handedly. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I don't think the result will ever be in doubt, if that makes sense. I really wish it wasn't on Christmas, because now I got to work on Christmas. It's going to be a pain in the butt. Gonna be with my mom and my sisters. FaceTime my dad for a little bit. Be like, hey, you about to watch this too? Yeah. Well, it's not gonna end pretty. So yeah, have presents and fun and whatnot in the morning, and then I think the first game's at 1 o'clock, so it's just gonna be like a typical Sunday, except it's gonna be on a Wednesday. So hey, we'll see. I think that they'll lose on Christmas, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is. I don't think a Michael Thomas signing would affect a wide receiver trade. If he's cheap enough, sign him and still try to trade for Ayuk. Guys, I think we need to let this Ayuk dream die. I just don't think it's happening. If the Ayuk thing was to happen, it would have happened during the draft. I think the 49ers are just going to run this thing back one more time with this core before next year, where they're absolutely going to trade Deebo Samuel. This is going to be like their last hoorah with this group of guys. So I think the Ayuk thing is very much dead. I think that Courtland Sutton is still in play. Treylon Burks is the fallback option if you can't get anybody else. I don't know about DK Metcalf. Maybe. We'll find out here in a couple weeks, maybe, if that's real. But I think that Courtland Sutton and Treylon Burks are the two that are the most logical right now. And even Courtland Sutton, I mean, the Broncos have said that they don't want to trade him, but if he doesn't, report to camp, then maybe they change their tune a little bit. We'll see. Lose to the Commanders. That sounds too much like a Steelers kind of choke team. Hey, look, again, every team has one per year. Every good team loses a game that they shouldn't lose. Every team in the NFL loses a game that they shouldn't lose. Just how it is. That's why they play the games. Sometimes things just happen. I think lose to the Eagles as usual, beat the Chargers. Maybe. And if they start off 3-0, I would be very surprised, just because it's hard to start off that hot in the NFL. That's why it's pretty rare that we see it outside of, the elite teams that have the elite quarterbacks. I just don't see that happening. But I think a 2-1, 3-2 start is plausible. And I think, again, if they can start 6-3, 7-3, and be able to, have that comfort going into the final 2 months of the season, that would be good. So TJ gets 6 sacks on Mahomes and Chiefs get. Hey, I mean, I wouldn't be upset by any means. I'd be very, very happy with that. Don't think it's going to happen, considering the NFL record for sacks in a game. I think it's a record 7 sacks in a game by one player. Derek Thomas for the Chiefs did it. That's the record. Who the hell? There was a Giants player. It was either Justin Tuck or OCU Manura had 6 sacks in a game against Donovan McNabb and the Eagles in 2008. And a really random guy for the Falcons. What the hell was his name? Played at Iowa. Pretty sure he's a first-round pick out of Iowa. He had a 5-sack game on Dak in 2018, 2019, something like that. What the hell was his name? Oh, that's going to really bother me. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't think it was Vic Beasley, but it was a guy who went to Iowa. I know that much because I'm a Penn State guy, and I remember watching him at Iowa when he got drafted by the. What the hell's his name? Oh, that's going to bug me. Ayuk is the goal. Never lose faith. Ayuk Steeler jersey will be a reality. I applaud the headstrongness towards it. I do not see it happening. Maybe signed by June 1st. They're definitely shooting for DK. Maybe. Again, there's just not a lot of names right now that would that make sense. It makes sense to want them, but doesn't make sense why teams would want to move them. So we'll see. Again, Chris Godwin could be a sleeper, maybe. Not paying Ayuk the money he would want. Never say never, man. This is a new regime, new era of Steelers football. Omar Khan is willing to do some things that Kevin Colbert wasn't. And look, they paid TJ Watt a ton of money, pay Minka Fitzpatrick a ton of money. If you want premium products, you got to pay premium prices. Got to pay good players. You are what you invest in. And if you're not willing to dish out the money for good players, then you can't bitch and moan when there's not a good product on the field. So I'd be very happy if they traded for Ayuk. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they're gonna, because I don't think the 49ers are going to move him. I actually think the Chiefs take a step back this year, but we aren't beating them unless they already have clinched their division and sit Mahomes. They're not going to sit Mahomes for the final 2 weeks of the year. Maybe for the last game, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to sit their quarterback for 2 games ahead of the playoffs, especially if they like have a first round bye. Then you're sitting your guy for a month. They're not going to do that because you want to keep them hot. Like you want to keep the reps and everything. That just wouldn't make sense. Now, the Chiefs are going to be good. I think they're going to be the number 1 seed. Like this is the Colts in the 2000s where they were always winning 12 to 14 games a year. It's the Patriots that were doing the same thing. This is the exact same thing. Like the Chiefs, as long as Mahomes is healthy, they're going to be winning 12 to 14 games a year. Sutton wants $20 million is just not with the money and picks. Just my take. Do you think he's worth that money for an average wide receiver too? Right now, the market just kind of calls for that. And a lot of that comes back to the Jaguars paying Christian Kirk $19 million a year a few years ago. So right now, $20 million for like a good receiver isn't too pricey. Especially when you look at what Amon-Ra St. Brown's making, what A.J. Brown's making, Devonta Smith, like all these prices are going up. Like when Justin Jefferson gets paid, he's probably going to make like $35 million a year, which by the way, like 5 years ago, that's what, a good quarterback was making. But as the salary cap goes up and as the importance of like, having certain players goes up, like the Vikings, of course you're going to, want to pay to keep Justin Jefferson around. If you're the Bengals, of course you're going to want to pay for Jamar Chase to stick around. The Eagles, yeah, you're going to want to pay for A.J. Brown to stick around. So it goes up and up and up every year. And so prices that, used to seem really high, even just a few seasons ago, are now just, the expected value. So if he wants $20 million a year, that's not too far off. If you want to argue that Courtland Sutton may not be worth quite that, if you think he's worth more in the 17 to 19 range, even then, how much of a difference is $3 million really going to make in the grand scheme of things when you can constantly restructure and move money around? So I wouldn't pick and choose and be too picky about a few $1 million difference. But I think that he would be worth around that, especially because you look at the production that he's had with 10 different quarterbacks. It's crazy. TJ did technically break the season sack record, and if it was still a sack and made up bogus reasons. Hey, say what you want. And the record books is 22.5. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. I would like to see him break the sack record this year. That would be pretty rad. Press flops this year. Fields is getting extended for cheap. Maybe. But again, like if you're Justin Fields, are you going to take an extension, or are you going to pull like a Mitch Trubisky did a few years ago, just sit for a year and then go get, $10 million a year from someplace else with a chance to be the starter? Those are things that he's going to be thinking about. Okay, 7-1. I don't know what BW stands for, Rob. You'll have to help me out a little bit there. 5-4, 12-5 division champion play. That is high expectations, Rob. High expectations. I don't feel, again, like I said before, I'm not giving a team that I don't know what their quarterback's going to be more than 10 wins. We saw the Steelers do it last year with bad quarterback play and a really good defense. So I think hovering around 10 is where I'm most comfortable being. 11 at most. It's just giving a team 12 wins. I don't know what Russell Wilson looks like with that schedule, man. It's positive thinking. Don't get me wrong. I applaud the hopefulness. Steelers have the money, but have serious quarterback questions unless Wilson or Fields proves. Steelers will have to make money to pay someone like Dak next year. I think that that's also a possibility. Like if they don't feel comfortable with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, I could certainly see them being in on Dak Prescott, which they absolutely should be. And say what you want about Dak. He just led the NFL in touchdown passes. Good quarterback. Better than anything the Steelers have had in a long time. And you put Dak with that defense, that's a team that can make some noise. You add a receiver in the first round to go along with Pickens. Like that is Pickens, Roman Wilson, Freiermuth, Jalen Warren, first round receiver, Dak Prescott, that defense, that is a team that can go deep. That is a team that I could look at and say, okay, you can talk me into this team getting to the AFC Championship game. Right now, you can't. I just don't see that happening. And that's not me trying to be a pessimist and saying, oh, there's no point in watching this year. Of course, they could surprise me. It just depends on what the quarterback looks like. But in a theoretical world where if Fields and Wilson both don't work out and the Steelers go get Dak Prescott next year, I would be absolutely on board with that. Absolutely. How much will Ayuk go for? I would say like 27 to 29. But between like 26 and 29 would be my guess for Brandon Ayuk. Come really for 24.5 million. Just hate trading picks for it. Oh, look, guys. They wouldn't be trading like high draft capital to get Cortland Sutton. Like it would probably be like at most, like the biggest part of it at most would be like a fourth and one of the sevens next year from the Eagles. Who cares? Honestly, I truthfully wouldn't bother me at all. Could the fourth end up being something? Maybe, sure, but like I'm not going to be butthurt over sending a fourth round pick for a good receiver. Do the Steelers really currently have 85 million in 2020? They're projected to, because there's going to be certain guys that are going to be free agents that they would have to bring back. Like James Daniels is set to be a free agent next year. Cam Hayward obviously isn't under contract next season, so it depends on what they do there. So they're going to have let's say that they do want to go after Dak Prescott. They would have the money to do it. Absolutely have the money to do it. And if you're the Steelers, man, like that would be almost like a Matthew Stafford situation where, a lot of people clown Matthew Stafford for a long time because, oh, he just can't win, never gets his team to the playoffs. And when he does, they always lose. And then the first year Matthew Stafford is part of a competent organization with competent players and competent coaching, he wins a Super Bowl. Now, am I saying that if Dak Prescott goes to Pittsburgh, he'll win a Super Bowl in his first year? No. But I am saying he'd have a much better opportunity of doing it in Pittsburgh than Dallas. So if the Steelers can, and look, I think the Steelers would be feeling like they were in win now mode too. Because how long is TJ Watt going to be this great? How long is Minkah Fitzpatrick going to be this great? You feel like these guys are kind of on a clock and you got to take advantage of it. So if this is another year that goes awry with quarterback play, swing big. Go get Dak Prescott. You got the money to do it. Do it. And plus, like, that's a guy where Dak is still, he was a rookie in 2016. So this will be year 8. Still a guy that's 30, 31, still has plenty of football ahead of him. You can sign your franchise quarterback for the next 5 years plus, and build around that rather than constantly being worried about what the quarterback situation looks like and having to build around a question mark at quarterback. You knocked the draft out of the park last year. It looks like you did it this year. Like, if you can keep drafting like this, then having a franchise quarterback, that's a pretty good thing to have in your pocket. So I would be totally on board with Dak Prescott. Absolutely. Obviously, let's let the season play out before we start talking about that more. I know I've talked about it a lot as a hypothetical, but we'll see. Outside the Bengals, who's your worst to first team prediction this year? Oh, that's a good question. Let's see who finished last in each division last year. NFC East last year was the Giants, and it's not going to be them. Giants are going to be bad, or the Commanders. Both of them aren't winning that division. NFC South is plausible maybe if like the Falcons just shit the bed, like, and the Panthers just come to life under Dave Canales. I don't think that's happening though. The Chiefs are winning the AFC West, so I'm not too worried about that. Maybe the Bears. I think that would be the only like logical one. I don't think that they were going to, but you could talk me into it as like them being the team with the best odds of doing it. But I think the Bears will be like a sneaky wildcard team. I don't think they're going to win the division, but they'll be a team that's hovering around the wildcard spot, and I think that they'll be the 7th seed in the NFC. Bears are going to be fun. I think that's one thing that we see is the Bears will be fun. TJ, Minkah, Alex, etc. need rings. We have the team and coaches. It's all about staying healthy. Yeah, and I mean, look, TJ Watt's been fantastic for a long time. Minka Fitzpatrick's been fantastic for a long time. Cam Hayward's been really good. Um, Alex Highsmith is obviously a very good edge rusher, but with all four of those guys playing together since 2019, they have a grand total of 0 playoff wins to show for it. Obviously Cam has some under his belt because he's been there since 2011, but TJ Watt doesn't have a playoff win. Minka Fitzpatrick doesn't have a playoff win. Like, they haven't won anything with these guys. Not even a sense of like not winning a Super Bowl. They haven't won a playoff game, and so that's just rough. It is very rough. Next year's fourth is protected, but they could send Denver a fifth and a seventh for signing. Yeah, even that would be fine if they sent a fifth and both of the sevens that they got from Philadelphia. Cool, fine by me. I'm not. They're not going to give up ginormous draft capital for Courtland Sutton, so nothing to really worry about. I feel like the season is set up in our favor. I know everyone is thinking different than that, but first 8 games are fairly easy, and teams will be hurting to stay healthy in the North Division. Well, look, Steelers could be hurting to stay healthy too. They dealt with some injury issues last year, not to the extent of other teams, but Cam Hayward was gone for a while. Deontay Johnson was gone for a while. Minka Fitzpatrick was gone for a while. So, I mean, they had some key guys that were gone. Obviously, the linebacker situation, the safety situation as well. Like, they had a lot of injuries last year. I don't see 7-1 ahead of the bye week. I just don't. But I think that they'll be a playoff team. I just don't see 12-5 division champion. I see 10-7, second or third in the AFC North, and a wild card team. And depending on who they draw in that situation, maybe they could finally get that playoff win. I'm excited to see the Bears. Also, Caleb Williams better have big shoulders or it could get ugly if he struggles. Team is built to win now. Yeah, I guess you could say they're built to win now. Defensively, I think they're going to be better than people expect too. Excuse me. Yeah, they brought in Keenan Allen, drafted Rome Odunze to go with DJ Moore. So that's good. But I'll go over this one more time just for everybody who joined a little bit later. It's always a pain in the butt because I want to hop into what I'm doing. But I also know that people usually don't hop into the 15-minute mark. So but that's okay. We'll go over it again. So game-by-game picks for the Steelers are as follows for me. Week 1 against the Falcons, I think that's a win. In terms of a score prediction, I'll give you that too. So I'll say Steelers win 24-17. Week 2, Steelers beat the Broncos 21-10 to get to 2-0. I think that they'll lose week 3 to the Chargers 26-20 and then lose to Indianapolis as well. I think that the Colts are going to be pretty good this season with Anthony Richardson. So I'll have the Colts beating the Steelers by the score of 27-17. But the Steelers bounce back against the Cowboys and win 24-17. And then they go to Las Vegas and beat the Raiders 27-13 to get to 4-2. They then host the Jets on Sunday Night Football. I think it'll be a low-scoring game where Aaron Rodgers just makes the one play that he needs to, and the Jets win 16-13. But then they host the Giants on Monday Night Football, and I think that could be their largest win of the season. I think that they're just going to beat up a really bad Giants team, especially on defensively where TJ Watt and that defense could just eat. So I think the Steelers will win 30-9 over the Giants and head into the bye week with a record of 5-3. And then week 10, they play the Commanders. I think that they'll beat the Commanders by a score of 20-10 to get to 6-3. And then again, the Baltimore Ravens have not beaten the Steelers a ton. The Steelers have won 7 of the last 8 against Baltimore. I think the Steelers continue that trend and win 21-13, which gives them a record of 7-3 as they open division play. I think that they'll split with the Browns and lose the first game against Cleveland in Cleveland. So I have the Browns winning 20-16 in week 12. Week 13 against the Bengals. Again, I think the Bengals are going to be really good. I think the Bengals will win 31-17, which drops the Steelers to 7-5. Week 14, Cleveland. I think that they'll get the win back at home and beat the Browns 24-14 to get to 8-5. And then a place that they haven't won in nearly 60 years, since 1965. I think the Steelers will go into Philadelphia and end that drought and win a low-scoring, hard-hitting, probably messy weather game, 20-16 to get to 9-5, They complete the season sweep of the Ravens again. They haven't lost in Baltimore since 2019. I think they get to 10 wins, get to 10-5 with a 17-16 win over the Ravens. And then unfortunately, they just have two heavyweights in the AFC to close out their year. I think they'll lose to the Chiefs on Christmas, 28-17. And I think that they'll get swept by the Bengals, losing this time in a closer matchup, 24-23, and finish the year 10-7. And overall, after doing my game-by-game picks for every team, I have the Steelers being the number 7 seed in the AFC playoffs, where they would face the Bengals for a third time. Hopefully, maybe surprise a lot of people and beat them, but it would take a lot to do it. But I have them going 10-7. Again, this is the first iteration of these that I do. I do one when the schedule comes out and then a couple days before the season starts. So that is where I fall with the Steelers schedule as of right now. Again, we'll see what changes between now and September, especially if they do land a big name at receiver. DK is the most likely Steeler on June 1st. Justin Simmons is a must sign. Guys, as much as everyone likes or wants Justin Simmons to go to Pittsburgh, a 30-year-old safety isn't going to be the guy who makes or breaks the season. I like Justin Simmons, and it would be a fine signing, but it's not going to be the thing that takes Pittsburgh from being maybe a 10-7 and all of a sudden makes them 13-4. He'd be a good defensive signing, and he's better than starting Deshaun Elliott or Devontae Casey, although Deshaun Elliott's fine. But I don't think that Justin Simmons would make the Steelers all of a sudden this big powerhouse. He would be, having him and Fitzpatrick as a safety tandem would be good, but I don't think that would all of a sudden make them 3 games better. I think it would make them better, absolutely, but I don't think that it would be this giant signing. I haven't been healthy as a team each playoffs. The gauntlet of North games in a row is a concern for me. If injuries will definitely be fun games, though. Yeah, like I said, I think that playing all of their division games in the back half of the year where it's going to be cold, it's going to be rainy, I think that'll actually play into their favor because that's the type of football that they like playing. So I think that it'll actually help them. Don't think any expectations that we end up trading for a true wide receiver 2 this year. I think Omar will keep his options open, but I fear we will draft a stud receiver in our next draft. We'll see. I'll also keep an option on the trade deadline, or an eye on the trade deadline, because if, say, the Raiders are, really bad, maybe you can, acquire a Devontae Adams, especially because the trade deadline is the Steelers' bye week. So that would be perfect. Acquire him during week 9. Gives them a whole week, not having to worry about playing a game to get acquainted with the offense. Perfect sense. Pretty sure the trade deadline's week 9. I might have just stuck my own foot in my mouth. It could be week 10. Let me just double check that. But I'm pretty sure it's week 9. Let's see. NFL trade deadline. Trade deadline is set to be on November 5th. So it's to follow week 9 games. Okay, so it's after week 9. Whatever. Either way, if the Raiders stink, yeah, maybe Devontae Adams would be a name to watch. Nine quarterbacks played all 17 games last year. We do have a better backup, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think that Wilson and Fields are both top 32 quarterbacks in the league, so that's nice. Not every team can say that. Then again, not every team does need to say that. If you have a Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to try to go and get, the 24th best quarterback in the league. They got Carson Wentz. That's interesting. Or, if you're a Buffalo, they got Mitch Trubisky as their backup now again. So, but yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to see what both Fields and Wilson look like, especially up close and personal. I'll be at a few days of OTAs, a few days of mini camp, and I'll be at as many training camps as I can get to. I'm going to try to go to at least the first 3 days. But I'll have written reports on Behind the Steel Curtain. I'll talk about it on here as well. So if you're not already subscribed and love the Steelers content, want more Steelers content, absolutely subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be very, very, very busy the rest of this offseason. and the regular season, of course. But yeah, I'll be at OTAs, I'll be at mini camp, I'll be at training camp, be all over the place. So absolutely subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe for all the Steelers content. Absolutely, all of it. If you got any more questions, stick around for about 5 more minutes till I get on out of here. Monday, I'll go over my AFC North predictions as a whole, and give you my 1 through 4 and why. So it'll be somewhat of an extension of this, but we'll talk more in depth about the AFC North as a whole, and my AFC playoff picture as well too. So that'll be Monday's show. And if anything crazy happens over the weekend, like a trade or something like that, obviously I'll do, a breaking news stream. Did that last weekend where, the stuff about Cam Hayward came out. So absolutely make sure you subscribe. Make sure to like the channel. If you want to become a Pump Fake Plus member, do that as well. $2.99 a month for extra perks in terms of content and being a part of the content, whether you want questions asked to media and players when I have them on. I did an episode of the Pump Fake today where I went over my 2024 1.0 standings predictions with the great Mike Tanier. So again, situations like that where, I do an episode of the Pump Fake a week. It's usually with a media member. So once a week, twice a week, you'll have the opportunity to ask media members from all around the country covering all 32 NFL teams questions. So that is one of the perks you get with being a Pump Fake Plus member. But even if you're not, go and listen to the show, go watch the show. Monday, I'm doing a NFC East preview with Jess Navarez, who covers the Dallas Cowboys. So that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, absolutely. Be sure to subscribe for all the episodes of the Pump Fake, all of the clips I post from the Pump Fake. Obviously every episode of the Black and Gold Breakdown, everything. Make sure you're subscribed. I know a few more questions came in, so we'll get to those. Carson Wentz does what Nick Foles did for him and helps the Chiefs three-peat as a backup. Wouldn't that be something? And you know what? Honestly, good for Carson Wentz. I was a big Carson Wentz guy. I was like the last guy on the Carson Wentz train. So I'll always hope for nice things for him. Justin Fields is going to become the next Jordan Love. He'll sit behind for a year or two and then take over. I don't know about that. I don't think he's going to be as good as Jordan Love, because Jordan Love is just so talented as a thrower. That would be nice. Again, I don't think he's going to be as good as Jordan Love, but if he can be, as good as, Jared Goff, that's not a slight at Jared Goff either. Jared Goff's awesome. What's a better comp? If he can be as good as like Kyler Murray, that would be rad. But even then, it's comparing apples to oranges, because yeah, Kyler Murray can run, but he's also got like a legit top 5 arm in the NFL where he can just sling it. So, and Fields has a powerful arm too, but he's got to, get more accurate. He's got to get better at processing. He's got to get better at a few things before, he can be a true franchise guy. And I hope that he does, because I'm a big Justin Fields guy and I want him to succeed. And now that he's in Pittsburgh, it would be even better to watch him succeed. Peyton Wilson start by week 5. I hope so. I think we're going to see a lot of Peyton Wilson early on, even if he's not, the technical starter. But I think he's just too good where you just can't not play him, especially in coverage, which is something that the Steelers have really lacked at the inside linebacker position for quite a while now. And he's a guy that is going to give them that. What's your thoughts on Michael Thomas at this point, and what do you think the contract may be? That is a vet minimum contract. That is a nothing contract if they do sign him, which would be pretty on brand for the Steelers to find a guy who they can pay nothing to, who was good 5 years ago, to come in. I wouldn't like it. It just doesn't make sense to me. He's a guy that had a stretch of 2 really nice years. Obviously holds the NFL record for most receptions in a season, and then just fell off. And a lot of that was injury related, but a lot of that is just that he's just not a very polished receiver when it comes to a route tree, when it comes to different things of that nature. He's a kind of a one-trick pony where it's a lot of drags and slants and underneath stuff. Like, he's a very good Sean Payton system receiver. But, you're not asking Michael Thomas to win downfield. It's just not his game. Are you answering questions on YouTube and Twitter both? Yeah. I stream the show on YouTube and Twitter. So if you're watching on Twitter, yeah, I pull up comments on Twitter as well. Fields will benefit from a Arthur Smith offense. I think so too. It just makes sense. This is an offense that certainly fits his skill set much better. And also, Luke Getsy's offense is ass. Like, respectfully speaking, Luke Getsy's not a good offensive coordinator and somehow has another job with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that that's not going to go well. So, just my thoughts. Not a good offensive coordinator. It's not an offense that makes sense. JT O'Sullivan at the Quarterback School YouTube channel has done at least one breakdown of Luke Getsy's offense. He might have done more than one, but I've only watched one where he just rips it apart because it's just not, it just doesn't make any sense schematically. So I think a lot of that was, just more stuff playing against Justin Fields. And my friend Tyler Dunn at Go Long is doing a series on the Bears right now and has spoken with several sources that were inside the Bears organization and were part of the coaching staff that kind of ripped Justin Fields a little bit, which I didn't necessarily love. And also talked about how it was just a really toxic environment in the quarterback room where him and Nick Foles did not like each other. And that Andy Dalton, everybody, it was just a not good situation for him as a rookie. So it's a lot of things that really played against him. And I hope that he is able to take advantage of this second chance. We can hope so. But all right, guys, I think that's where we're gonna cut it for the night. Nice, almost hour-long show. I'll be back on Monday to give my AFC North predictions. Again, this is a 1.0 version, so we'll revisit this in September when I do it again. We'll get training camp, we'll get preseason, we'll get, potentially more, depth moves for some teams, potentially some more trades and whatnot to, influence my decision-making. But, we'll talk about the AFC North and my division predictions on Monday. And we'll go from there. And if any sort of news happens on Saturday or Sunday, I'll hop on and talk about it rather than wait till Monday, especially if it's like a big thing. Like if they were to trade for somebody, obviously I'll hop on and talk about it. But if you're not already subscribed, please do so. If you know somebody who is a Steelers fan and isn't subscribed, send them my way and make sure that they're subscribed to hop in on this every weekday. Let's talk about the Steelers. It's what we do here. So, and if you want more of more NFL content, again, I did the latest episode of the Pump Fake today, where I went over my NFL standings predictions 1.0 with the great Mike Tanier. So that's on the channel or wherever you get your podcasts. So a ton of content from me today, and I appreciate you guys for tuning into all of it. I'll see you Monday for, again, the Pump Fake will be on Monday, and Black and Gold Breakdown will be Monday evening. So another double dip of me on Monday. So just make sure you're liking, subscribing, doing all that YouTube stuff. See you next week to talk all things football. See you then.